As dusk settled over the sprawling city, a familiar silhouette cut through the twilight sky. It was him, the dragon firefighter, on his nightly patrol. His senses were sharp, honed by countless emergencies, always ready for the first hint of smoke, the distant wail of sirens, or the desperate cries for help that signaled his duty. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was only silence. This wasn't the peaceful quiet that followed a successfully doused flame, a city breathing a sigh of relief. No, this was a heavy, profound stillness, a pressure against the air that felt ancient and strange. It was an absence of sound that was louder than any alarm. Drawn by this uncanny quiet, he veered from his usual path over the concrete canyons and steel towers. The silence pulled him like a current, leading him away from the familiar grid of streets and toward the dark, jagged line of an ancient forest that bordered the city. It was a place he rarely had to visit, a place that usually took care of itself. As he drew closer, a faint flickering orange light caught his eye. A single point of warmth in the cool, dark woods. A fire, but not like any he had ever encountered. He descended, his massive form gliding silently between the towering trees, his mind already calculating the best angle to unleash a torrent of water. He landed with a soft thud on the forest floor, the moss and leaves cushioning his weight. Before him, a small fire burned with a gentle, almost meditative quality. It wasn't raging or spreading with the usual chaotic hunger. It didn't crackle and spit with destructive glee. Instead, the flames moved slowly, deliberately, as if they were performing a delicate dance. They swayed among the ancient trees, their light casting long, moving shadows that seemed to breathe with the forest itself. The dragon took a step forward, his powerful lungs already beginning to draw in the cool night air, preparing to extinguish the blaze as he had done 1,000 times before. He was the city's protector, and fire was the enemy. That was the simple, unwavering truth of his existence. But as he read it himself, he hesitated. Something was wrong. Or rather, something was unexpectedly right. The fire didn't react to his presence. It didn't recoil from the shadow he cast over it, nor did it surge in defiance. It simply continued its quiet, methodical work, seemingly unaware or unconcerned by the colossal creature poised to destroy it. Curiosity, a feeling he rarely had time for, began to stir within him. He lowered his head, his gray golden eyes, usually narrowed against smoke and heat, now wide with wonder. He watched the flames with an intensity he typically reserved for assessing structural weaknesses in a burning building. And as he watched, he began to see. He saw that the fire was not consuming everything in its path. It licked gracefully around the thick, gnarled trunks of the living ancient trees, leaving their bark unscorched. It delicately avoided the vibrant green ferns and the tender new saplings that pushed up from the forest floor. The flames were selective. They only touched the dead branches that cluttered the ground, the dry, brittle leaves from autumn's past, and the decaying logs that could no longer support life. It was a cleansing. The fire was clearing away the old, the spent, the finished, making room for new growth. It wasn't an act of destruction. It was an act of renewal. It was the forest healing itself, using fire as its tool. This wasn't an enemy to be fought, but a process to be respected. The dragon had spent his entire life fighting fire, seeing it only as a force of chaos and ruin. But here, in the heart of this ancient wood, he was witnessing its other face, fire as a creator, a guardian, a vital part of the natural cycle. For the first time in his long life, the dragon understood that fire was not inherently good or evil. It was a power, a fundamental force of nature with a dual purpose. It could destroy homes, but it could also clear the way for new ones to grow. It could bring fear and loss, but it could also bring balance and rebirth. The heavy silence he had felt earlier finally made sense. It wasn't the silence of fear. It was the silence of reverence. The forest was in the midst of a sacred ritual, and the entire ecosystem held its breath in respect. He stayed there for hours, a silent observer, watching the fire complete its work. He watched as it slowly dwindled, its task complete, leaving behind a layer of nutrient-rich ash that would feed the soil. He saw the space it had created, where sunlight could now reach the forest floor and encourage new seeds to sprout. The air, once thick with the smell of smoke, now smelled of earth and rain and promise. That night, the dragon firefighter made a choice he never thought he would. He turned away without releasing a single drop of water. He left the fire to its purpose. He rose back into the night sky, leaving the ancient forest intact, its quiet wisdom now a part of him. As he flew back toward the sleeping city, he carried a new understanding. Sometimes, protecting the world isn't about fighting every battle. Sometimes, the greatest act of protection is knowing when to stand back, when to trust the balance of things, and when not to interfere. He was still the city's guardian, but now he knew his duty was not just to extinguish flames, but to understand them. And in that understanding, he found a deeper purpose.